but subliminally, there was this other force that was completely outside of the relationship that was telling us, like, you guys are so fun and happy together, and that's how it should be, right?
You have to be protective and have really strong boundaries around who you want to engage with and how you engage, because, or just be very true to who you are, because that noise can show up at any point in time. Lesson 10.
Turning down the noise. For better or for worse, the release of the show is always one of the most formative moments of anyone's reality TV journey. Shortly after the cameras turn off, the screens will turn on, and the broadcast, that moment we've all been waiting for, or in some cases dreading, finally begins.
Chances are that the release of the show will be at least as emotionally demanding as performing. Until now, everything you've done for the show has been ephemeral. Like any other moment in life, it has come and gone with little fanfare. But in this moment, all of that changes, and the feedback, in every sense of the word, begins.
Blogs, articles, threads, profiles, leaks, tweets, DMs, the list goes on. People will talk about you, to you, and for you, and you won't have any control over any of it. We call all of this feedback the noise, because really, that's all it is. Noise.
It's ironic, because the best way to gain a sense of control over the situation is by recognizing that you have no control at all. The only thing you can control is how you respond to the noise. The edit you see may be unflattering, and people on the internet may insult you, but you are here now, and no one can take this present moment away from you. In reality, none of the noise matters. It all exists out there, or in some cases, in here.
People are bound to scrutinize, speculate, and criticize your image on the show. So in the lead up to the premiere, prepare yourself. Know that these people have no bearing on your actual life, and remember our first rule. This project is part of your life. You are not part of it.
So let's dive into it. Like this, we've talked about is probably the most important lesson of all the lessons that we've had so far.
Absolutely.
And we're still learning it, but like, how can you think of this, how this applies to like your experience, or what are some things that were embarrassing for you or leading up to the show that you just did not feel comfortable with?
Yeah.
Or were afraid of?
Yeah. I mean, leading up to the show, I think, I went into it with a sense of joy, with a sense that like I would just receive a pretty favorable edit, and I wasn't too worried about it.
Yeah.
What I didn't realize, and what I didn't necessarily have this self-awareness for in that moment, is that even a favorable edit comes with some degree of difficulty. Right?
Certainly.
That even if people like come to love and adore you and think that you're, so cool or wonderful, sure, it's a little bit better than an unfavorable edit than being vilified.
Certainly.
But with a favorable edit comes a certain degree of pressure, of expectation, right? People, in my case, right, as we both did, we ended the show still with our partner. And people are invested in that relationship. And the noise, in my case, it wasn't criticism.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily saying like, oh, you're a bad person, or how dare you do this. Instead, it was that people felt a sense of entitlement to know kind of like intimate details about my life, right? And that they felt invested in a relationship that was like very personal for me, right? And suddenly the noise was kind of the second iteration of the triangle, right? The cameras went away, but in their place came all of these people, right? Who were messaging, who see us on the street and say like, yo, are you still married? You know, who are, saying like, oh my God, you inspired me so much. And at times that's heartwarming and that's like gratifying and deep and cool. But also, without even realizing it, it can infiltrate, it can contaminate a relationship, right? That like, in my case, I think we oddly felt this pressure. We felt we might not have even recognized it, but subliminally, there was this other force that was completely outside of the relationship that was telling us like, you guys are so fun and happy together and that's how it should be, right? And I think it prevented us from going deep with each other after the show aired, from like really trying to interrogate, investigate like who we are to each other, because this image, this very public image had imposed itself on us. And I think, the noise, even though it was good noise, even though, we might even say it was music, it was still influencing and changing our very intimate lives. So that's certainly one thing that I want people to be aware of, because I think what people go into this mostly fearing, right, is getting a bad edit. And being perceived in a negative light. But really, like, getting a favorable edit, while obviously more desirable, is still something to be prepared for. It is still something that will impact your personal life, your relationships, your psychology. And it is something that you will want to compensate for, account for, through the broadcast process and beyond. Miles, I'd love to hear kind of about how you prepared for the noise. I'd love to hear how you tried to turn down the noise. What was your experience?
Man, it was one of the toughest experiences of my life. Straight up. We talked about in one of the previous lessons around how when the show is being shown, it's very different from, like, you may or may not know what other people are saying. So like, other castmates may say one thing and that may never have been brought to light. And then it's brought to light when the show airs. And I'll never forget when our season aired, the promo was like so like catchy and like, and exciting. And I was like, they say, hey, the promo is coming out tomorrow. So I'm like excited to see the promo, but kind of nervous about it. But like, I'm on TV, right? And the way that the show is about love, right? And it's supposed to be like this beautiful thing. And the edit that they showed, or the promo they showed, was like immediately my partner being like, he's not my type. I know who this person is. He's not my type. And I never knew that. I had no clue that's what was happening. And I'm like, and mind you, this is like 4 or 5 months after the show finished airing. So we made our decision. We decided that we were going to be together. We are like living this happy, we're figuring it out together, right? We're in a much different place than we were 4 months ago. And navigating the pandemic, we're still trying to figure stuff out together, And we're moving to a new house and like whatever. And we're watching this promo, and I remember like looking at her. And in my deep in my heart, I'm like, what's up? But then also I like see how it's like devastating to her and it's hurting her. And she's like, I didn't know that they were recording me when I said that. And like, I was feeling all these different emotions. And so I'm like, wanting to be protective of her and support her and make sure she's like, doesn't feel these negative emotions that are coming and protect us. Right. And then at the same time, like my friends and family are seeing this too. They're like, hold up. Who does she think she is? She don't want you, right? Like getting upset, but like everyone's feelings are valid. And I think one of the parts that I struggled with the noise was I wanted to protect us and I wanted to protect my partner and like castmate by like, hey, listen, what y'all think this is, it's not what it is. Like, let's show them this is who we really are. Whereas I wish that I would have not even fed into any of the noise because I think that ultimately it was just constantly like a ringing in my ear, if you will, for the entire relationship. You know, even when a year, 2 years past it, it's like it's constantly there. And I wish that there was a way to kind of insulate ourselves better. Because we have attentions of like social media, right?
Yeah.
And so like, especially when you're on a show, it's about like relationships. The longer you're a part of like the machine, the more lucrative it can be, the more opportunities you have. I mean, we were on the freaking cover of a magazine, you know, like stuff that you're doing photo shoots and doing stuff that we never anticipated, right? It was cool. It was fun. It was like beautiful stuff. We made money that we didn't think we would ever make, you know, doing just by being ourselves. And there's also this inherent pressure behind if you stay together or if we stay together, like our livelihoods can change. But then at the same time, it's like if we don't stay together, we lose all of these things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that sense of identity can really be a challenge. And then I think another point you brought up is you're constantly being asked. I mean, to this day, hey, are y'all still together? Are y'all still married? Like constantly asking that stuff. And disappointing people by saying, nah, we're not together anymore. That's a real thing, you know? And it's not like it's already hard enough to say to your family and your friends and et cetera, but then random strangers asking about your relationship and then having strong opinions of your relationship is hard, man. It's really, really difficult. I remember that there was a time where me and my partner were out, and she was very anxious about being out at the time or out in public because people were just very cruel to her. I mean, she received death threats. She received like all kinds of things that were unwarranted, you know? And this woman comes up to us and I'm like, please God, do not let her mention this show. Like, please do not bring up the show. She recognizes us from the show. She recognized me. And she says, oh my gosh, you're Miles, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, she's like, we love you. My mom loves you, blah, blah, blah. And turn to her and are like, you lucky that he held on to you. You should be blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, you don't know this woman, first off. Second, like, why would you say something like that? Like that by saying that you're a fan of me and that you're also saying that like, that we are one right now, right? And so you coming at her is not honoring me. Like, I don't want to connect with you. I don't want to take a picture with you now, right? But then you also just ruined my night because we haven't been out for weeks. We're trying to go out and have some food and have a nice night, and now she's mad for the rest of the night. So you ruined my night, right? And so it's like people have to be very mindful of what they say to people. But then also, if you're in this seat as the person who's on camera, realizing that like you have to be protective and have really strong boundaries around who you want to engage with and how you engage or just be very true to who you are because that noise can show up at any point in time. Yeah.
Yeah, you brought up so much really important stuff and I want to like take the time to like focus on a few things. One thing that I find really interesting is, you know, in relationships, you know, I think often in our culture, we talk about like honesty being the most important virtue, which I personally don't believe. I believe that honesty is important, but there are some moments when, you know, the rule that I live by is like, if it's not helpful or it doesn't like empower the person you're telling it to in some way, then it's best left unsaid, right? Honesty is not always the best path forward. And in this case that you're describing where like you found out something that it probably would have been best for you not to ever find that out, right? But we're in this exceptional circumstance where it's often impossible to leave things out that are not helpful, right? Like I don't think it would have been unethical for her to not tell you what her initial response was, right? There's so much pressure, you know, it induces so much tension, right? I can understand how someone in that very strange, very difficult situation might react in such a way, right? But, and if it were not filmed, I would think she would be totally justified not to share that with you, right? Because only ends up hurting you. It only ends up like contaminating the relationship, right? It doesn't empower you. It doesn't help you know anything more, right?
And we've shifted so much since then.
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
thoughts have changed, feelings have changed, everything.
Totally. So, that becomes part of the noise, right? And we've talked about like anticipating, right? And how important that is, right? Is to say like, oh my God, I said this thing that I really wish I hadn't said in front of cameras about Miles before Miles finds out through the TV. I need to do damage control. I need to talk to him. I need to be real with him. It's going to be really hard. I wouldn't have shared this with him beforehand, but it's better he hear it from me than he hear it from somebody else, right? So you can mitigate the noise by anticipating what's to come, checking in with yourself, saying like, what were some things that I said or did that I wish I didn't say or do behind someone, the back of someone I care about? And what do I need to say to that person? How do I need to communicate with them so that we together can work to do damage control before anything comes out, right? Because if you had the chance to turn to your family before it came out, say like, hey, this thing is going to happen. You're going to see this. Like, this person was in a really tough situation. Like, please take it with all the grains of salt. Then it probably would have made that whole moment a lot easier for everybody involved. And it's so hard to know that you should do that in advance. You won't know. She didn't even know she was being filmed, as you said, So yeah, it's also hard. Another thing that you brought up that's such a tangle, such a mess, right? Like, we both went into this. You're an educator. I'm a theater maker. Our careers, we're not, as you said, like, we're not trying to be influencers.
No.
We're not going into this trying to make money off of this. No. But even if that's not our intention, we might kind of serendipitously or accidentally end up having these like sources of income, right? Making like thousands of dollars off of this, right? And suddenly our most intimate personal relationship is intertwined with a very large chunk of our income, right? And this was not the intention at all, but suddenly our romantic relationship is kind of part of our career. And it makes the stakes not necessarily even higher, but it just changes the nature of the stakes. Like, you see this future in which, like, you know what, if I stay married to this person, and you might not even like admit this to yourself consciously, which I didn't do. I was like, well, if I stay married to this person, we could be pulling in like, however many grand a year just by like taking a few hours to like shoot ourselves, shoot footage of ourselves now and then, and like, that's a very luxurious possibility, right? But like, the fact of the matter is that like, we're also like, being a reality TV personality on the face sounds very easy, right? Because we're just shooting ourselves for a few hours, and that's
influencer sounds easy.
Yeah, but in fact, what we're failing to recognize is the emotional, the often subconscious emotional labor that's going into it, and that follows us around from moment to moment to moment, even as we're not filming, right? Because the more our public personas and our private lives are intertwined, the more we are working when we are just living, And so even though on the face of it, it seems like, okay, I'm making like a couple $1,000 just to film this like a quick, simple thing. Like, damn, I'm making a few $100 an hour. Really, that's not accounting for the fact that what I'm sharing with the world is going to just show up in random moments that I can't foresee. It's infiltrating my everyday experience.
Yeah.
And that requires a great deal of, it's not easy, you know?
No. And I think especially with like streaming platforms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's one thing if it's on a channel.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing if it's on another streaming platform
Mm-hmm.
and you're aware that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
In our instance, I think it was a year, maybe 2 years later, it came out on Netflix and we're like all over again. Like all these people, millions of people are getting exposed to you and introduced to you at a time where it's like so far past what happened. I mean, if we go back and look, I was like 25, 26 years old when it came out. I'm 30, right? I'm a very different person. My life has changed tremendously in that time period. I've grown a lot. I've matured a lot. My ideologies have shifted. My views on a lot of things, on marriage, on partnership, on my career have shifted a lot. And when you're on a TV show, you're stuck in time. People know you as like, this is where you were. This is your character. This is your archetype. This is who you are. This is what you felt. This is what you believe. This is who you are. And they identify with the part that's important to them, right? So I remember this lady came up to me one day. She was a fan of the show, and I vividly remember her face, like on social media. Vividly remember her face, and she was talking about something negatively about me. I can't quote it right now, but was just like, Miles is too young and he's naive and such and such and such and such, right? And so let's call her Spunky Girl 37, right? So me and my partner are out, and the lady sees me,
Spunky Girl 37 sees you.
Spunky Girl 37 sees me. And she takes a picture with me and is like, oh, I love the show, blah, 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 right? And so I look, like she tags me in the picture. So I look in my DMs and I'm like, you were talking shit in my DMs about me, but you're also asking to take a picture with me in real life. So what's real and what's not? But then also it's like, you must not feel that strongly about me if you feel like you need to take a picture with me, right? And it was such an odd like experience, because it's like people will say or do anything on the internet. That world is not real. And in real life, like these same people who are scrutinizing you and saying these things about you are also people who are fans of you in a lot of ways, right? And put you on this pedestal and see you in this certain light. And so I say that to say, it's noise. It's all noise, right? And you have to be so grounded in who you are, what you believe, especially with reality TV being something that preys on your self-esteem, right? You have to have a level of just focus and just groundedness that can get lost so quickly. And I'm interested in hearing from you, like what do you do to be able to like stay grounded and like be able to block out all the extra stuff?
Yeah, well.
Or how you did it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't always, you know? It's not always that easy. And, you know, there's one specific instance that's like really embarrassing for me that I've never talked to you about before. When it took me a while to really I think talking about the internet, it's so much of this is about the internet, right? And exposing ourselves to the blogs, to the social media stuff, you know? And there was one episode that was released. There was an outing that you and I and our respective partners were on together. And like, I would occasionally, I would check the blog about the show. And there was this still image that was, put out a bunch of times. Thanks so much for taking part in this lesson today. We hope that the ideas we shared were helpful to you. If you enjoyed the content, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with people who you think this content could be useful for. We're looking forward to sharing more lessons with you in the future, talking more about our own experience, and hopefully giving you what you need to navigate the experience of being on a reality TV show.